This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Hello, everyone. Gabby here.
And I'm Steven Stuckey. Hi, everyone.
And welcome back to the Mystery of Everything podcast. I hope you guys had an amazing Christmas, and I hope you guys will have an amazing New Year. Today's episode is a continuation of the cult series that I started a few months ago, and it's not another tea company, but it is equally as fascinating. So today we'll be looking at the Japanese cult called Om Shinrikyo and the sarin gas attacks that were carried out in 1995. So in order to really get a full picture of exactly what happened that day in 1995, we need to get a clear picture of what this cult really was and develop an understanding of what their goals were. So to start off, Om Shinrikyo means supreme truth. It was a group that started in the 1980s, and their beliefs were based on a combination of Hindu and Buddhist beliefs. They later added on a lot of the dire apocalyptic beliefs that can be found in Christianity. And so this group, it was actually founded by a man named Shoko Asahara, and his real name was Chizu Matsumoto. So he founded this cult in 1984, and it gained popularity through the doomsday belief set, which I guess if you make people really afraid, they will join your cult.
To be fair, this cult was founded in the 1980s, and considering that this was arguably I'm not going to say the height of the Cold War necessarily, but it was the climax of the Cold War for what was going on in the 80s, because shortly after that, that's where the Soviet Union was collapsing over the course of the late 80s going into the early 90s. So, yeah, at any given point for the last 20 years, people did believe that nuclear Armageddon could break out. And what is the one country on this planet that has been nuked?
Japan. So, yeah, this cult's belief, they had a lot of traditional religious teachings, and they used a lot of New Age tactics. And yeah, while it seems strange, like he was just saying that apocalyptic beliefs help with the cult's popularity, if you think about the US nuking Japan, it makes a lot more sense. Coming off of the relative recentness of that particular action, especially for Japan. So seeing the widespread destruction would give a little more worry of apocalyptic events to the Japanese people. So the cult was marketed using the fear tactic that the world was about to enter World War III, and only the members of Om Shinrikyo would survive.
I will say this right from the very get-go. That is, I know it sounds crazy. Obviously, it sounds crazy to us now. That is a relatively realistic belief, except for the only our cult members will survive part. But everything else, like the people did think that a war was going to break out. They didn't know when, they didn't know where, but they believed that something was going to happen and that it could possibly result in the destruction of the world.
Every single day that World War III does not start, I'm like, wow, who would have thought? Not me.
You have a way calmer reaction than the people who joined a death cult.
Well, I mean, look around, buddy. Look, what do you say? Geopoliticking time bomb? Like, this is a hot mess.
It's true. Yeah, that is the reality. And 2024 has been insane, especially not just 2024. It's like the last couple months of 2024 have not wanted to calm down.
Exactly. So interestingly enough, the cult members of Om Shinrikyo were highly educated, consisting of scientists and engineers, which not only gave a lot of knowledge to the cult itself, but they also brought in a lot of funding. And we know this because former members testified that they paid a lot of money for cult rituals. What were these rituals, you might ask? Well,
what were the rituals?
Well, some said they paid over $8,100 in 1988 for a blood initiation where he drank Shoko Asahara's blood.
Oh, dear God.
While others said they paid large sums for his hair and bathwater.
All right, hold on. No. This is, I got to wait this for a moment.
Are you going to look up what $8,100 in 1988?
$8,100 in, what was the year? 1980 what?
88.
Okay. Dollars in 1988.
I feel like it'd be a lot.
Well, it's probably tripled, at least in value in here. Calculate. All right. That is worth $21,601.80 today.
Yeah. So it's just a little blood ritual. Totally normal.
Dear God.
I mean, if I could get paid $21,000, you said?
Yeah, 21,000.
Yeah, if I can get paid $21,000 for my blood, honestly.
Yeah, you gave your blood for free.
Yeah, but
Do your
never
job.
again. Never again. My asking price is $21,000. So the group gained official status as an official religious organization in Japan in 1989, and they established a significant global following. Shoko Asahara, he spoke at universities, wrote books, and had decently good reach. At Aum Shinrikyo's peak, they had tens of thousands of members around the world, with a lot of these members being students at prestigious universities.
That is way more extensive than I anticipated, but it also kind of does make sense for what's happening. Okay, so you know how this is like a doomsday cult in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Japan had a lot of these, perhaps not to the extreme degree, of Aum Shinrikyo, but cults are a pretty big thing. It's in fact, one of the warnings when I went and I studied abroad there in 2014 was that my university or my college specifically gave a warning that said, hey, if you are walking through the streets and people are trying to push books onto you, watch out. Those are likely cults.
Wait, what? Still?
Yeah, look, still to this day, cult movements are a fairly, I'm going to say popular and like it's, the majority of the population or anything, but there are quite a number of cults that are still active and are they're almost like salesmen in their marketing tactics. Not going door to door necessarily, but like people in the streets just trying to like similar.
I want to get handed a cult flyer.
I think I was actually given one while I was over there, but of course it was in Japanese, so I couldn't read it. So I think I still have it somewhere buried inside a box.
If anybody wants to recruit me to their cult, email me. You know our email. Okay. So
Gabby.
I want to be part of something great. I just want the option of being invited, like you're not going to go, but you want to be invited.
That's the most high schooler level approach to a cult I've ever heard in my life.
Well, you obviously don't get it. So anyway, how does a doomsday cult with doctors, engineers, and top students turn into a violent cult? Well, Aum Shinrikyo actually started getting deadly in November of 1989. So yes, November of the same year that they got recognized as an official religious organization, they started murdering people. And the murder that they carried out was actually really disturbing. So at the time, people had no idea that the cult was responsible, but it came out in September of 1995 that they were. So Tsutsumi Sakamoto was a 33-year-old lawyer that was working with Aum Shinrikyo members that wanted to leave the cult.
Oh, which is a big no-no.
Right. So in October of 1989, he was warned by a senior cult member named Kiyohide Hayakawa to back off. But I guess he didn't listen because on November 4th, 1989, he and his wife Satoko and their 1-year-old son Tatsuhiko were murdered. So cult members entered their home while they were asleep and injected them with lethal doses of potassium chloride. And then they strangled them.
Dear God, even down to the 1-year-old.
Yeah. So their remains were not found until September of 1995 after the depositions of cult members. Sakamoto's remains were found in Nadachi Town, Niigata Prefecture. His wife's remains were found in Uozu in Toyama Prefecture. And their infant son's remains were found in Omachi, Nagano Prefecture. So they spread them out. They put a lot of thought into this.
Dang.
But yeah, basically they were terrible and they did terrible things. Also, prior to the sarin attack that this episode is about, they were also responsible for another attack known as the Matsumoto sarin attack, which was an attempted assassination that occurred in Nagano Prefecture on June 27, 1994. So in this particular attack, 8 people were killed and more than 500 people were injured. This particular attack was carried out to specifically target judges that were expected to give an unfavorable ruling against the cult in a real estate dispute. So the cult, they wanted to set up headquarters there, but the people of Matsumo were like, no, you're not going to set up your headquarters here. They actually got a petition with thousands of signatures to block it. And obviously this pissed, Aum Shinrikyo off. So the attack was carried out. However, instead of releasing the sarin in the courthouse like it was initially planned, the plan was changed to release it in a residential area where the judges allegedly resided instead. Interestingly enough, at the time of the attack, the cult was not suspected. It wasn't until after the Tokyo attacks that Aum Shinrikyo was investigated in relation to this sarin attack. Like, the thing is, people thought of them as just like a harmless religious organization until they did the big attack. So they were literally getting away with stuff for like years.
Oh, dear God. It's okay. You know, the term that is oftentimes used for things on the internet, like of weaponized incompetence.
Yeah.
This was weaponized incompetence of weapons and incompetence.
But potentially. So remember how earlier I said a lot of the members were actually scientists and engineers, and how this would bring in not only knowledge, but money?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the knowledge that was brought in was vast, and it was used mainly in producing nerve agents and a lot of other types of deadly weapons. So this is where things get super weird and downright insane, because while the cult is famous, or should I say infamous, for the sarin gas attacks, there were far more things that they did or attempted to do. In 1990, Asahara saw an opportunity for the group to capture power through normal electoral politics. They could simply get voted into power. So in February of that year, after establishing the Shinrito Party, Asahara and 24 other members ran in a House of Representatives election. And maybe it was something about the whole doom and gloom aspect of them or something that didn't really appeal to voters, but they all lost, even after spending millions of dollars on the campaign. And the results led Asahara to decide on using violence as a means to capture state power instead.
Of course, you know, because that's exactly what you would want to do in a situation. Oh, no, we lost. People aren't going to listen to us. We'll kill them all.
Yeah, so like in his mind, the apocalypse was coming and only his cult members were destined to survive. So like, I get it, but at least he tried the peaceful route, you know? Like, do you think if people voted for them, they wouldn't have been violent? Probably not, because they were already murdering people in 1989, I'm assuming. So yeah, in order to support its militarization program in Japan, Shinrikyo built state-of-the-art national and international procurement networks. The group built a stronghold close to Mount Fuji and other smaller factories to produce special weapons and create a chemical stockpile. So they built their biological and chemical warfare program by recruiting 300 qualified and trained Japanese scientists and engineers. The program started with Seiki Endo, a virologist trained at Kyoto University, harvesting botulinum bacterium from the Ishikarigawa Basin in Hokkaido Prefecture in 1989. Cult members cultivated the bacteria into very large, crude, homemade fermenters.
They literally were just out there like, all right, guys, we got a shovel and we got some buckets and we're going to get this bacteria and take over the world. It's like, imagine that is your base, right? It's like you think of the whole thing with a Bond movie or like some kind of villain. And it's like, all right, we're going to create a weapon of mass destruction. We're going to order it through the black market channels and get all this. No, we're just going to get a shovel and we're going to dig up some stuff.
It's homemade, Stephen. It's have
organic.
To appreciate
it's
homemade. How are you supposed to know what's in your chemicals if you don't grow them yourself?
It's an organic homemade terrorist attack. Oh my God.
Whether these are capable of maintaining the environment or temperatures required is completely unclear. No efforts were made to purify the resulting yellow liquid, a mixture of growth media and bacteria.
It sounds disgusting.
Enormous volumes of the yellow liquid were supposedly produced based on data provided by interviewed cult members. It is estimated that total production was in an insane like 450 metric tons or something like that.
Crap, that's huge.
So given the challenges faced and its crude approach, the cult's efforts to produce botulinum neurotoxin unsurprisingly appear to have been unsuccessful. So mice on which the yellow liquid was tested showed no toxic effects, and one cult member reportedly slipped into a fermenting tank and nearly drowned, but subsequently showed no signs of illness. Isn't it amazing that his life was saved from their incompetence?
It was just saved from them being incompetent.
So good, they failed, right? Well, here is where it gets really stupid. In early 1990, the cult nonetheless disseminated large volumes of the liquid from trucks fitted with crude spray devices, which is, I think, kind of the same type of device they used with the sarin attack in Matsumoto when they attacked the judges. It was like
this is just like the early stages of them trying to put it all out.
So they deploy these in the vicinity of 2 U.S. naval bases, the Narita Airport, the Japanese Diet, the Imperial Palace, and the headquarters of a rival religious group for their first major attempted terrorist attack. But no one appears to have been infected, including cult members who accidentally exposed themselves during the dissemination process. and the efforts went unnoticed by the police. Oh my God.
They just failed horribly.
I'm
they're
happy
actually
they
trying to
failed.
do something terrible. Have you ever seen
But
God,
it's just reading like a really bad like comedy where they're like, we're villains and we're gonna do evil things, and then everything they do is just not evil and it's not working, and everyone's like, oh, that's so cute.
there is a movie. Hold on. This is going to really bother me. There is a British comedy movie that is genuinely hilarious. Something Lions. What is it? Four Lions. Okay. This is a movie. This is what it makes me think of. Four Lions is a British comedy that is the tale of a group of British jihadists who push their abstract dream of glory to a breaking point. Basically, it's about four terrorists who, over the course of the entire movie, are continuously trying to launch terrorist attacks, but for some reason, they keep on, due to their own incompetence or something else, screwing things up for a series of comical errors until they finally succeed in the end and everything goes to shit.
So it's kind of the same concept. Maybe it was based on this.
Maybe.
So though they got away with it, things almost went haywire when in the fall of 1990, at that time, 3 leaders were arrested for fraudulently purchasing land for a new compound. The police did not realize it at the time, but chemical weapons production facilities were under construction on that new land. So according to a key cult member, the arrests were seen as a sign that a police raid was imminent and they had been discovered. So responded by dismantling its chemical and biological weapons facilities. So that
they didn't even know that anything was happening.
I know. So that's kind of like I don't know, it's just like comedic almost, if it wasn't so sad and destructive. So things were fairly quiet for the next 2 years, but in 1992, the cult started their bioweapon production efforts up again with a new focus on bee anthracis, and that makes anthrax.
Dear God.
Material was prepared in crude drum fermenter. They really love their crude drum fermenters, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And no efforts were made to purify the 10 to 20 metric tons of liquid slurry produced, which was dispersed using a homemade sprayer.
Again.
So first from the roof of a cult building located in a residential neighborhood, and later from a modified truck. So in the former case, some birds and neighborhood pets were apparently killed, though whether by the substance released remains unclear. Neighbors complained of the foul odor and gelatinous substance that rained down in the building's vicinity, which led the police to visit and gather samples, but they were not tested until after the 1995 sarin subway attack.
The fact that they didn't
test it is weird, right?
If anything had been tested earlier, they would have been able to find out that something was happening. That is what is actually insane.
So after attacks failed to produce any casualties, the group began to employ crude drying devices to produce a powder, an unknown quantity of which was disseminated by truck in Tokyo. Although some neighborhood birds may have perished, it appears no humans were harmed as a result of anthrax efforts. In fact, multiple cult members apparently inadvertently inhaled the material produced and subsequently reported no ill effects. You know how many cult members would have died if they were actually successful? Like at this point, it's gross
themselves.
Incompetence. Like no one would have been left. So as with other bacteria, a variety of factors appear to explain Alm's lack of success, including they may have been trying to produce a deadly strain of the virus from a vaccine strain, which is really hard to do since it's already so weak.
Oh my God.
So even in the unlikely event that the effort had been successful, the resulting strain might not have been sufficiently strong enough for production, storage, and dissemination.
So it's like the whole point of a vaccine is that the virus is already weakened so that your body can fight it and grow accustomed to it so that, it can resist.
Yeah.
So if they're trying to take a vaccine strain and make it deadly, that's really hard to do.
So when these efforts failed to produce any casualties, in 1993, the group again attempted to produce botulinum neurotoxin. And they used small quantities of material it produced to unsuccessfully attack individuals and a subway station. So even with these failures, they weren't done yet. Like they just kept on going and they're not even succeeding. I guess that's like persistence, it's a positive trait. But in Western Australia, the cult scientists were hard at work developing what were essentially bioweapons. They worked on testing sarin as well as synthesizing the VX nerve agent. They also had a failed attempt at manufacturing automatic rifles, which is like a whole thing in and of itself. In Western Australia, there was a cattle station, or according to some websites, a sheep farm, where about 25 members of the cult moved in 1993. The thing is, Australian customs were actually alerted to their arrival due to the large amounts of luggage that they brought with them. I think it was like $30,000 worth.
$30,000 worth of luggage.
It included things like generators, ditch diggers, gas masks, lab equipment, and chemicals. The chemical being hydrochloric acid that was transported in large glass bottles that they labeled hand soap.
Oh my God.
So the more I research about them, the more I realize that this is definitely only something that could have happened like in the 90s, because what do you mean? What do you mean you can fly with all of this?
Literally, this, if there
possession.
is anything that can sum up pre 9/11, that is what this is.
But the thing is, though, 2 cult members were arrested and charged with carrying dangerous goods on an aircraft, and they were fined like $2,400 each. And customs did seize some of their equipment and chemicals. So, I mean, there were some consequences, but still, could you imagine pulling up to the airport with unlabeled hydrochloric acid?
Dear God.
So this small setback didn't stop them, though, and the cult bought the farm called Banjawarn, and it was in an isolated location on the edge of the Great Sandy Desert. It was also the location of a still unexplained explosion that rocked the entire region on May 28, 1993.
Still unexplained?
Yeah. So this explosion actually measured a 3.6 on the Richter scale, and it was thought to be a small earthquake. But it did have many people believing that they were either mining for uranium or developing nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Because the thing is,
hold
people
on.
who live there were like, yeah, we heard like a giant like explosion. There were flashes of light and the ground shook. But nobody really knows what happened.
There's no way that even with their scientists and engineers, that they would have had the resources for things to actually develop something here for a nuclear weapon. Well, actually, technically speaking, maybe they could have created a dirty bomb. Maybe they could have actually done something along those lines, because there is actually the case of there was that kid who ended up accidentally making his own nuclear reactor in the backyard.
I love when I accidentally make a nuclear reactor.
Like, he fully intended to do it. It's just the accident was, of course, that
it worked.
Well, I guess so. Yeah. God, I can't remember the name of that kid and what actually ended up happening to him, but it was a big deal. But yeah, it freaked people out because he actually made, as just like a teenager, a functioning nuclear reactor, like miniature nuclear reactor in his backyard. So they could have done something. It doesn't mean they can create like a full scale.
You get into trouble for making a nuclear reactor?
Oh yeah, you could, especially over the course of the Cold War.
Oh, he was during the Cold War. He made one.
Yeah.
Read the room, my guy.
I'm pretty sure it was over the course of the Cold War. But this happened.
We don't know what that explosion was. We have no clue. But what we do have confirmed is that Banjawarn was used to test and make sarin. So traces of sarin were found in the dead bodies of 24 sheep on the property, as well as in the soil on the property. But that brings us to the attack I mentioned earlier, the prelude. On Shinrikyo, they began their campaign of terror on June 27, 1994. So in Matsumoto, a city of 300,000 people, the cult members drove a converted refrigerator truck into a residential neighborhood. So they parked in a secluded parking lot behind a stand of trees. They activated a computer-controlled system to release a cloud of sarin, and the nerve agent floated toward a cluster of private homes, a mid-rise apartment building, townhomes, and a small dormitory. So this was just a prelude. The main event began almost 8 months later on March 20th, 1995. So fingerprint evidence for an AUM member linked to an earlier kidnapping, in addition to the sarin-contaminated soil samples, caused the police to set a raid for 22nd of March. Asahara was made aware of the impending raid by 2 cult members inside the Japan Self-Defense Forces.
He had spies.
He had people everywhere. And they ordered an attack on Tokyo subway lines close to the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, possibly as a desperate attack to initiate the apocalypse. So, due to rushing and poor quality controls, the sarin produced was of lower quality, and it caused the normally colorless sarin to appear brown. Later, forensic analysis found that the sarin used in the attack was roughly half as pure as that used in the Matsumoto attack. So 30 kilograms or 66 pounds of the chemical was manufactured and stored in a large container from which it was distributed into plastic bags. So 5 Aum Shinrikyo members, they boarded subway cars on 3 different lines in central Tokyo during rush hour. And guys, if you've ever been in Tokyo during rush hour, it is sandwich. You are packed. Like,
you are sardines. It is the definition of it.
It's an intense amount of people in there. They actually punctured the bags with the sharpened tips of their umbrellas, and they left them on baggage racks or on the floor to seep the deadly gas into the carriages.
And they did this in like and because I guess the way that the Tokyo trains would have worked from that, because they're all going to different lines, it means that as every time one opens up and people are walking out and leaving, this means that the gas is not only on the actual trains themselves, but the gas would be leaking into the stations as well, which would spread it through the entire region.
So the trains were scheduled to arrive at central Kasumigaseki station within 4 minutes of each other, and the cult hoped not only to kill everyone on board, but also use the trains to deliver the gases to a massive interchange used by thousands of passengers at a time. So fortunately, mistakes made in developing the siren and its delivery method meant the attack was far less effective than intended, and the group only succeeded in killing 12 and injuring 5,500 people. And then another victim died later. So according to a report, chemical weapons experts estimate that tens of thousands could have easily been killed if the attack had been carried out correctly.
But oh dear God, but we remember from the very beginning that the gas that they produced was half as pure.
Yeah.
So it was a rush job that they ended up screwing things over, and then they probably didn't have enough of it in order to be able to do what they wanted.
So the attack evidently backfired, and instead of distracting police, they would instead conduct huge simultaneous raids on cult compounds across the country. So over the next week, the full scale of arms activities was revealed for the first time. At the cult headquarters, police found explosives, chemical weapons, and a Russian Mi-17 military helicopter.
They had a helicopter. Okay, wait, hold on. I think I remember seeing something about this, that one of the plans that they had. So, okay, you know how they had the refrigerator truck that was going to be spraying stuff?
Were they going to do it from a helicopter?
I think they had a plan to do it from the helicopter, where they would be either spraying gas or dropping powder, like going over. And you know, we covered this before when talking about World War I planes, how before they had bombs, they had flechettes, like the little iron darts.
Yeah.
Just in a Russian helicopter flying over a city, dumping anthrax and other like powdered bioweapons.
That actually
over
sounds
a location.
really destructive. So I'm glad they did not get that off the ground. Pun
Dear
intended.
God.
So along with this, there were stockpiles of chemicals that could be used for producing enough sarin to kill 4 million people.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Police also found laboratories to manufacture drugs such as LSD, methamphetamine, and a crude form of truth serum, a safe containing millions of US dollars in cash and gold, and cells, many still containing prisoners. Like, they had prisoners, you guys. So during the raids, issued statements claiming that the chemicals were for fertilizers. Over the next 6 weeks, over 150 members were arrested for a variety of offenses, but arrests of the most senior members on the charge of the subway gassing had not yet taken place. Asahara was finally found hiding within a wall of a cult building on the 16th of May, and he was arrested. On the same day, the cult mailed a parcel bomb to the office of Yukio Aoshima, the governor of Tokyo, blowing off the fingers of his secretary's hand.
They're still going for it.
So Asahara was initially charged with 23 counts of murder and 16 other offenses. The trial, dubbed the trial of the century by the press, ruled Asahara guilty of masterminding the attack and sentencing him to death. The indictment was appealed unsuccessfully, and a number of senior members accused of participation also received death sentences.
Okay, so I think I remember seeing something about this before, that one of the ways that they were able to last for so long is that it's like, it's not every, they had tens of thousands of members. Not every single person was a part of the death cult. It's almost like Scientology, where it's like the further up you are, the more you know.
Did you do the episode on cults with me, or was that Brenna? But when I did the episode on cults, the closer to the leader you are, so like the inner circle usually makes the decisions and calls the shots, but the lower ranking members are just they're literally just grunt workers. So
Yes.
they believe in something, but what they believe in may not be what the inner circle believes in. And that's all part of control, the way cults control people. Because the more mystery that's surrounding it, the more they're able to be manipulated.
Correct. And that's kind of the way that this whole thing would apparently work, that the lower levels, that even if they weren't as fully invested in the, global war of annihilation that was going to destroy them all, they believed that something was coming, that in making the lower grunt workers accessories to the crimes, they kept them in control, because it wasn't the senior cult leaders that were going out and doing all the criminal actions. They were organizing all of it, yes, but the people who were going out and spraying things and getting involved in the vats and falling in, those were the lower level people. And just by virtue of them being a part of it, they wouldn't rat anyone out because they themselves were accessories to the crimes.
Yep. Also, what blows my mind is they had prisoners in cells. Like, were people not missing these prisoners?
Probably not. Well, here's the thing. What happens happening with cult when someone leaves and goes and joins a cult? It's like they could be gone. I mean, already there was a bunch of people before that had been trying to escape, that they were leaving, and that's where the whole lawyer came in, who, he got murdered, and his wife got murdered, his child got murdered by the cult. So theoretically, they reached a point where they're like, yeah, no, these people are flight risks. And also, there's the thing. If they are actively planning terror attacks and they have all this stuff, and there are people with that knowledge that are trying to flee, you cannot let them escape. It's not even just a matter of letting them leave the cult. They can't be allowed to leave at all.
Whatever happened to a nice little sing-song cult? Why does it have to take a dark turn every time? So on 10th October 1995, Shinrikyo was ordered stripped of its official status as a religious legal entity and was declared bankrupt in early 1996. However, the group would actually continue to operate under the constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion.
They still continued?
Yeah, funded by a successful computer business and donations and under strict surveillance. Attempts to ban the group altogether under the 1952 Subversive Activities Prevention Law were rejected by the Public Security Examination Commission in January 1997. So the cult changed quite a bit in the aftermath of Asahara's arrest and trial. For a brief time, Asahara's two preteen sons officially replaced him as guru.
Oh, yeah, because that's who we're going to follow in a doomsday cult, is it's going to be the preteens.
It reformed under the new name Aleph in February 2000 after it announced a change in religious doctrine. Texts related to controversial issues were removed. The group apologized to the victims of the sarin gas attacks and established a special compensation fund. Publications and activities that alarmed, basically scared the shit out of, and terrorized society are no longer published.
Wow, what a great development to have.
Listen, at least they apologized and they rebranded. It's to rebrand, you know?
Okay, so that's them, and the other guys were... What ended up actually happening to Asahara then?
So on July 6, 2018, Asahara and 6 other Shinrikyo members were executed by hanging. And the thing is, in Japan, they don't it's not like a publicized event. Like, executions happen behind closed doors, so then they'll just announce it.
Yeah.
So Japan's Justice Minister Yoko Kamikawa would go on to state that the crimes, quote, plunged people not only in Japan but in other countries as well into deadly fear and shook society to its core. And that ends the crazy murder doomsday cult of Shinrikyo. Aleph is still around, but it is a shadow of its former self, and it is regularly monitored by police. But yeah, that's the end, everyone.
Dear God.
I don't understand them letting the cult continue to exist, though. Like, that would stress me out.
I'm confused as to what... Okay, I remember seeing something that there were even... I remember seeing a thing where the cult was arrested in the first place, right? Like, a bunch of people were being arrested, and they were bringing in foreign experts from around the world to testify on their behalf. And there was a controversy, I remember, in the United States that a major religious freedoms organization was brought over to speak on their behalf. And then when it came out what it is that they actually did, the organization was so embarrassed. They're like, oh God, no, hey, no, we didn't know that any of this was happening. We are sorry. No, guys, sorry.
Wow. But they had people everywhere, so.
They did have their people everywhere. I remember seeing that they had organizations set up in New York. They had organizations set up in Moscow, in London, basically every kind of major city.
The ones attempting, to start they wanted to jumpstart the apocalypse, but
yes.
They have to do it right.
Yes. And through widespread terror attack. Here's the thing. Theoretically, you could.
They could have probably, because no one suspected them. They could have thought it was a foreign adversary.
Exactly. So if they did end up actually managing to develop something with nuclear capabilities, a dirty bomb, something, they could have actually done something that would have led to some kind of conflict between the powers that could have resulted in something catastrophic. This could have happened because I still remember this is happening in the 90s. The Soviet Union was collapsing in the early 90s. And what ended up happening at that point is that all of that excess Soviet military hardware was going on the black market for pennies on the dollar. I mean, it was so cheap. So a lot of the terror organizations that would arise later specifically would be able to get super cheap Soviet equipment because what they had done, and I remember when I did my whole video on the AK-47, one of the hallmark traits of the communist governments was stockpiling weapons. So they would just build massive amounts of cheap weapons as part of their national GDP and growth pattern. And then they would store this stuff away. They would hide it in preparation for if they went to war with the West.
Yeah.
So after the Cold War was over, that stuff starts going everywhere and different organizations start buying up massive amounts of it. Both their military hardware, like the helicopter, that makes sense. Also chemicals, bullets, like guns, everything.
Wow. But yeah, that's the episode, guys. If you know of any other interesting topics, let us know. And thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.